Chair, morning members, thanks for taking this item out of sync. Just to update members, at page 40 at 3.3.2, it makes reference to a verbal update being given should we hear any update from the Nith District Salmon Fishery Board. Unfortunately, my understanding is that the Fishery Board has not yet met, and therefore I don't have an update to give on what the rateable value assessment fee will be for the forthcoming year, Chair. But happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Derek. Okay, do members have any questions? No questions as yet, so we maybe need to go to the actual, let me see. I think we need to make some consideration and agreement on the ticket prices for next year's season. So we have three options. Option A, B and C. Do members have any preference to any? We really need to be discussing this to see what which way forward we wish to go. And I know that the levy, if we'd had information on that, may have gone towards members' decisions, but as it is, we need to make this decision now. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I'm looking at the three options that we've got. Option C is obviously a continuation as is. B slightly dearer, and A is probably the most, I would say, without having the information of the levy, it's difficult to try and make that kind of decision. Because if the levy is more expensive than the last time, then it looks as if, you know, members may wish to choose the higher of the other options. But that's just a view at this moment in time. I'm happy to hear other members' views and where we want to pitch that sort of costings without affecting, you know, the junior rates, for example, or other visitors coming. You know, if we price it too high, is there a risk that we don't get the visitors coming if we price it in between? So I'm happy to listen to others. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Hislop?
Chair, it's obvious from previous years that we do not cover a full levy if required. And I think we need to be working towards that, and I think we should be looking at option A at this time. The risk is that we will lose fishermen, but the thing is, if they're dedicated £18 for about 6 months fishing, £3 a month, is that going to put them off? I don't know, but I think we need to be working towards making sure that if we don't get a rebate like previous years, we can cover the cost of the rateable value. So I'm sort of favouring option A at this moment.
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. Can I ask Derek, we have surrounding baits. Are we in line with the cost of the tickets for surrounding baits, which we know are, I don't know what the numbers are for the uptake of those, but just the cost, are we in line with those at the moment?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, relatively in line with the neighbouring beats. Certainly, I think they've set their fee at £140 for theirs is a regional ticket, whereas obviously ours is Nithsdale based, so you know a wee bit different there. But theirs is set at £140.
Thanks, Derek. I see that Councillor Stitt in the chat has said he agrees with option A with Ivor. Do we have any other member contribution to this discussion? Anyone otherwise minded? Does anyone think we should go for B or C?
I'll have to agree with Ivor there. Probably go with.
Sorry,
A.
who's sorry?
David Slate. David Slate, Councillor Slater.
Okay then, David, can you put your hand up and I'll put it in the chat so that I know who it is, because I can't see who it is unless there's a hand up.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Do you want to come in, David?
Yes, I tend to agree with Councillor Hislop on that one. On A, if that's okay. Thank you.
Right, thanks very much, Councillor Slater. Anyone else? Are we looking like we are thinking about going with option A? I know my preferred would be option A also. Okay,
Agreed.
Agreed? Everyone agreed with that?
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay, so any other comments, any other questions on this paper? Because we have now received that we're category 3 again, so it's catch and release, just to note that. So members have any questions, or are we quite happy to go to the recommendations? Okay, right, so I'll go to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, note that £9,354 of income was generated from the fishing ticket sales for 2022 season as detailed at paragraph 3.1 and the breakdown of ticket sales in Appendix 1. 2, review the catch return data for 2022 season as detailed at paragraph 3.4 and in Appendix 2. And note the conservation status of the 2023 season will be category 3, resulting in mandatory catch and release of salmon as detailed in section 3.2. So consider and agree the 2023 regulations outlined in section 3.6 and contained in the draft Dumfries Common Good Fishing Regulations 2022 Appendix 3, and to consider the options and agree the fishing ticket prices for 2023 as season outlined in 3.7, and we have gone with option 1, Derek. And 6, agree to continue with Sunday fishing only and grayling only tickets to extend the fishing season and agree ticket price as detailed in section 3.8. Does anyone have any comments on the ticket prices for the Sunday fishing only and grayling, or are we quite happy to go with the recommendations? No comment. I would say we're happy to go with the recommendations, Derek. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming on your leave day and for presenting this report. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members.
Right, we'll move now to agenda item number 5, Lorburn Hall Dumfries report by Head of Economy and Development. This report provides members with an update on the Lorburn Hall, and Paul McCulloch, yeah, I can see Paul, is available to take any questions on the report. Hi, Paul, do you have anything to add to the report, or are you just happy to go to questions?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Nothing to add to the report and happy to go to questions.
Thanks, Paul. I see we have Councillor Campbell, John Campbell, up first.
Thanks, Provost. Good morning, Paul. I've had a discussion with the Lorburn representative. I won't be reading out what they've put down in a piece of paper because it looks as if it's something that should be done at a future meeting. So I'll just leave it at that at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Is this something that can be fed into the consultation process?
Yes, I'm sure it could be, Provost, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best place for it then, but thanks very much for that.
Okay, thank you.
So does anyone have any comments, any questions? Ivor, Councillor Hislop, would you like to come in?
It's just a wee bit on if we do look to extend the licence. Now, our job as trustees of this common good is to maximise the income and the assets. If we were to put it in place, can we ask for a nominal rent towards the actual lease? If we do that, is there a legal issue with regard to then terminating it over a shorter period? And are we up to date with all bills with regard to electricity? Have all apportioned costs been met from both sides? I think the guides and the electric theatre company, etc. I think they get the electrics apportioned from either side.
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. Paul, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Hislop. So, first question, can we ask for rent? The answer is yes. the current lease arrangement, sorry, it's a licence. The current licence arrangement ends at the end of March. Therefore, if members were minded to extend this, members can decide whether or not rent should be paid. Is there any issue thereafter with termination? No, because we would extend the licence to suit whatever members agree. And the third question, have bills been met? That's something that I would need to take back. I know that bills certainly have been issued for heat, light and power and the like, but I don't have the answer to that question right now.
You happy with that, Ivor?
Yes. If we were going to look at putting a charge on for the months, etc., how would you determine the going rate for it? And I think rather than possibly the full rate, because it's just in a short-term lease, maybe a slightly reduced one, because if someone's got to take this over, you need to see if it's going to pay, and this would give them an idea of whether the actual tenancy, I think they're one of the interested groups, if it's going to be sustainable for them.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hislop. So, I mean, what we would do there is we would look at what we consider to be market rent. We could then offer at a rate, at a percentage of that, should members be agreed to that. So, you know, I suppose what I'm saying is it's really up to this committee to determine exactly what we do with regards to any possible extension.
You happy with that, Ivor? Thanks, and thanks, Paul. Do we have a service agreement from both these occupants?
So what we have at the moment is a licence to occupy for the Electric Theatre Company, and the Girl Guides are on what's known as tacit relocation. So their original lease or licence expired, and they're in there now on what's known as tacit relocation.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Lowe, you had your hand up. You've taken it down. Do you still wish to speak? You're on mute.
You just asked the question I was going to ask.
All right, sorry. I think I've got Councillor Stitt.
Cheers, Tracy. I'm quite supportive of what Ivor suggested, that we, after March the 31st, we maybe put a charge on it and make some money for the common good fund. Whether it's reduced or not, I think we need to get a bit of revenue, and then we can maybe sort out later on what's going to happen. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. A wee question for either Paul or Julie. I'm not sure which. What's the legal situation if you keep repeating a month-by-month contract? When does it become permanent? Is there a danger we could fall into that trap?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. So the answer to that question is no. But there isn't a danger that we could fall into that trap. However, Julie may be able to articulate it better than me. So, Julie, can I pass across to you, please?
Thanks, Paul. Morning, Chair. Morning, members. Yes, I mean, it would be on a sort of a rolling basis. So at the start of each monthly period, you know, you would give notice that the lease would expire at the end of that period, if that's what you wanted. So basically, you would just keep a constant eye on things to see how things were in the bigger picture. And then, you know, say, for example, you wanted it to expire, I don't know, end of August. You would give them notice at the start of August that the licence arrangement would expire at that point.
Are you happy with that, Andy?
Oh, absolutely. I was just worried. I know with other types of contracts, if you continue renewing them, they become, there is a danger they can become permanent after that. So I've got the answer from Julie and Paul, and I understood you, Paul. I didn't need Julie to come in, but thanks very much anyway.
Thanks, Andy. I have two hands up. I know about Councillor Lowe, but I've got another hand before. I can't see who it was. Was there someone wanting in?
Councillor Stevenson.
All right, Councillor Stevenson, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair.
Just two things. One, I've tried to look at the back history of this, and I can only find that it ever went to Nisdale Area Committee. I just don't understand why it's gone there, but didn't come here for the decision about the electric light company to go into the Lorburn Hall to begin with. And are the Girl Guides paying rent and the electric theatre companies not? Is that, can I just get clarification on that, please?
Would that be you, Paul? Could get clarification on that, or is that Julie?
Yeah, to answer the first question, my understanding was that the reason it went to Nisdale Area Committee was that there wasn't a meeting of the Common Good and it was delegated. I think that's what happened there. Second question, with regards to the Girl Guides, my understanding is they do pay some rent.
You okay with that, Councillor Stevenson?
Yeah, I just think it's a wee bit unfair that the Girl Guides have been made to pay rent, but the theatre companies not. I don't think that's very fair, especially when part of the common good is that we make as much fund as possible for the common good. Yeah, and I'm not too sure how I feel about the fact Nisdale Area Committee made the decision, because when I looked at the papers there was no withdrawal of delegation either, so I'm not sure how that would work. Just being new in, I'm not sure what the consequences of that would be. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Lowe?
Yes, I'm just wondering if a month-by-month extension is going to hold up any plans that they have, for example, for events and the things that they do, and just how that might impact how they use the building, if it's only taken month by month.
Maybe how long do we anticipate the process will take? I think by the time we get to go to the sheriff, we're already about 5 months or 4 or 5 months by then, and I can't imagine the Dumfries Sheriff Court, I can't imagine this will be top of the pile to address immediately. Is there perhaps maybe an idea here to maybe do like a 6-month extension as opposed to a month by month? Because I think Councillor Lowe's right, there's maybe a bit of insecurity in the sitting organisation. If they're thinking they can't sort of organise for 2 or 3 months ahead. So, and would that protect, as Councillor Ferguson brought in the situation, if it's a rolling month by month, if there's an occupation situation? So, I don't know, is that something that we could consider, Paul or Julie? So I see Julie's hands up here.
Just with regard to the point about sheriff's consent, I think we find that when we put in an application for alienation, the general period of time that the sheriff is taking is 8 weeks. So I would suggest that I think that would be the same situation here. From putting in the writ to getting decree would be an 8-week period. That's just to clarify the timeframes there.
Thank you, Julie. So if there was a suggestion to do a 6-month extension with a month, I don't want to say eviction notice, but I mean, if the case was where that they might put an application in, they might be the ones that win the lease, but if that wasn't the case, there would be like a month. I don't want to say eviction, sounds like we're throwing people out, but you know what I mean, for leaving that month time. Would that be a suggestion that would be possible, and would members have an opinion on that? Paul, would that be, or Julie, would that be like a possibility?
So just to come in, Chair, absolutely. What we could do is we could extend the licence for a 6-month period with a 30-day termination clause, is the words you were looking for. So basically what we could say is that we extend this licence to occupy for a 6-month period. The termination date is X or Y, and either side has 30 days to terminate. 30 days notice. Julie, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I would just say that if we are extending the lease, the licence, because that's what it is. If we're extending that by 6 months from the end of March, then I would advise that we maintain the 40-day notice period within that 6-month period. If we were extending on the month-to-month basis, then it would be a sort of a month-to-month notice period, but 6 months, 40 days.
Can you maybe explain that, Julie, why 30 days, not 30 days, but 40?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally if you have a lease or a license that's sort of in excess of a year, then the kind of common law situation is that you give 40 days notice. So clearly we've got a year and 6 months. So we've got 18 months. So it would have to be a 40-day notice period.
Thank you. And Paul, do you wish to come in as well on that?
Not so much on that point, Chair, but just to let members know that the lease amount, the amount that the Girl Guides pay for occupation of the Lorburn Hall is £1,000 per annum.
Thank you for that. Now I have 4 people wishing to come in, but as the hands have popped up, I can't really see who was first. So if someone could give me
Councillor Jordan, then Councillor Campbell, then Councillor Slater.
That's great. Thank you, Darren. So Councillor Jordan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just going back to something that Councillor Stevenson raised about the amounts that some groups are paying and then some groups are not. I don't think that's very fair. I don't understand how that can be. I just wonder if we could ask for a report from the officers about monies invoiced, monies received, and how we came to the decision to charge some groups and not others. Perhaps that report could come to our next meeting. I'm not sure how quickly that could be done, but I just think that it's very unfair to charge one group more and another group at different rates. So perhaps they could explain that. Thank you.
Is there a verbal answer to that, Paul?
Very much so. So any, in terms of council property and assets, any building that's leased at less than best consideration requires member approval. So, within our delegated powers, we have the ability to lease at market value. But if any decision is taken at any point in time to lease an asset at less than best consideration, it's for members to decide. Hence the conversation we're having today.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Jordan? I think what Paul's saying is this was a decision made by members to allow the Electric Theatre Workshop in there at no cost. So this has been a member decision in past, well, I think it was in Nithsdale Area Committee.
So made at Nithsdale Area Committee rather than at this committee?
The parent committee, yes, rather than this committee. And as Paul mentioned earlier on, after Councillor Stevenson's question, there was no common good scheduled, so it went to the Nithsdale Area Committee, which was due because it was a decision that had to be made quite quickly.
Right, I'll just think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Thanks, Paul, for that information, because a number of elected members have already expressed that they wish to see the Electric Theatre Workshop pay rent. Now, if it's a member's decision, if it's below best value, where are we going to pitch that as a member's decision today? Or do we just leave it to you under delegated powers? I don't know what's probably the best thing for us as members to do. I would suggest that we, at the very minimum, at least match what the Girl Guides are paying. But I would also suggest, because they've got a larger part of the premises, they actually pay more. So it's a case of where do we pitch that rent? Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Paul, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Campbell. So, in terms of governance, any lease at less than best consideration has to be a member decision. The way we can do that today is to agree that we take the market rent position, and if we want to offer less than market rent, that members agree to a percentage. That way, we've made a clear decision today in terms of how we take that forward, rather than pushing it back through to officers. I think if members agreed a position regarding market rent minus X or Y%, we could take that forward.
So
Councillor
do we know
Campbell?
what? Thanks, Provost. So do we know what the market rent is, so that we can make that percentage?
So in terms of market rent, my understanding there was a calculation done previously, but I don't have that to hand today.
So we can't make a decision today?
There could certainly be a decision taken on market rent minus X%, and we could take that forward.
Well, that's my point. If I don't know what the market rent is, I don't know where to pitch my percentage. We're just
Yeah,
going round in circles here. Thanks, Provost.
That's Councillor Campbell. Is it Councillor Slater next?
Yes, Chair. I think really that 6 month extension of 6 months is possibly the best idea at the moment, because I've had a look in the hall, I must admit, and there's been a lot of work done by this organisation, and a month by month, it's not long enough for to make any progress as where they're going forward. So I think they would need at least 6 months to show and to maybe get their organisation better as such for the people of Dumfries. But on a month-to-month basis, I have to say that's too short for any business, I must admit, to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Councillor Stevenson?
Going to get this one day. Thank you, Chair. When I was doing the research, the per annum rental value was £50,000, which is quite an extensive sum of money. So, it's up to this committee to decide what we want to charge them, and I do think it should be an elected member's decision to do that. But I am fully supportive of them remaining in there for 6 months. No business can work on a month-to-month basis, especially just now and in the environment that they're in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Hislop?
Well, I'll make a proposal and then it gives somebody an idea. I would say that if we're going for a 6 month period, the first 3 months we charge 25% of the equivalent rent for a 3 month period. So if we make it, rather than the 50,000 that was talked about, 48 sees it is split by 12 months. So 4,000 a month, that would be 1,000 a month. If that's what it is, move it up in the second 3 months to 33%, then monthly after that to 50%.
That's pretty precise, Ivor.
Well, I think if you're taking it on over a longer period, you need to realise that you will have costs. And if it's just a case of, I don't think putting it full market value straight away, because they haven't had time to prepare any business case or costs for that. But I think we need to look at some way of just breaking them in and making sure that if they are one of the successful ones, they know what it's going to take to actually run that business in that location.
Thanks for that, Ivor. That's a good place for us to start for consideration. Councillor Maureen Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I'm just thinking of the 6 months. You're getting events organised within 6 months and they will have overheads to pay. And how are they sure of that income to pay the rent on a 6 monthly? Because they're going to have to organise events, and only having 6 months to do that, it's not sort of giving them enough sort of time and to sort of get an income to pay all the overheads concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston, but they have been in there for a year already, rent-free, so members are minded to, I think, with the thought that I'm getting from everyone, minded to charge some form of rent from here on if we grant an extension. Paul, did you want to come in? I've seen that your hand came up at the same time as Maureen's there.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So absolutely happy to take forward any member recommendation regarding apportionment regards the sort of percentage reductions in what we classify as market rent. Unfortunately, I don't have that figure to hand for members today, but we can certainly get that very quickly.
Thanks, Paul. Right, and I have some hands up, but
Councillor Stitt, then Councillor Slater, Chair.
Thanks very much, Darren. Councillor Stitt.
Cheers, Tracy. If we're mathematician Ivor's willing to put that motion for it, I'm quite happy to second it.
Even though we're not quite sure of the actual market values yet, and I know Councillor Stevenson has given us a ballpark, but until Paul can confirm that, then we're not really working with a confirmed sum. Councillor Slater?
Yes, most of the people that are working there are actually volunteers. And I know how difficult it is to start and run a business. It's not easy, many sleepless nights and such. So I think if there is going to be a rent, it has to be reasonable that they be able to pay it, because if they can't, their plans and that for the future could all fall to dust. So I think that's important as well. They're trying to do something for the town and they are making headway, but most of the people are volunteers. So the rent would have to be, if it was too high, they could just possibly say, well, we can't do this and possibly have to walk away. That's just my opinion on it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. We do have the town and businesses to consider, but our main in this committee, our concern is the common good asset and how that is best used for the community. And yes, that's using it to, it's being used really well just at the moment, but we also need to think about the financial cost to the council and to the common good if there's no finances coming in. So I think that's why it's been suggested. I think we have, Ivor, are you wanting back in?
It was just to clarify that my mathematics were based on the actual, whatever the rent is, if Paul goes away and finds that out, and if he allocates it as per 25%, 33, and then going up to 50 afterwards, after the 6-month period. That's all I was concerned with. I was just using the figures that Paula gave us as an example. But if it's different, I'm happy to accept that.
Councillor Malcolm Johnston.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy with Ivor's suggestion as well, but as a kind of way to work around it, could we maybe not consider putting a maximum on it?
A maximum funding or a maximum time, Malcolm?
No, a maximum level of grant. Could we not cap it? Could we say 25% of market value, assuming we take the 50,000 figure? That's 10. That's I'm full of the cold, so my maths is struggling today, unusually for me. But we could just put a figure on that, because that's £1,000 a week, so it'd be 250 quid a week basically. So we could perhaps pursue that as a means of getting a decision out today.
Paul, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks, Councillor Johnson. So in terms of the market rent, there was a figure previously reported of 50k, and that was very much a high-level valuation. I think in terms of reality, and it's something that I will have to confirm through a valuation process, but I think the sort of level of rental for that building for the Electric Theatre Company's part of that would be more akin to about 20k per annum. So that's the kind of figure that I'm pretty sure a valuation would throw up, but it's just to put that context in there for members to move that forward.
Thanks, Paul. A number of hands up. Darren, do you know who's first?
And I think we've just heard from Councillor Malcolm Johnson, so it is Councillor Stevenson.
Okay, Councillor Stevenson then.
Hi, sorry to come back in. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, that figure of 50k was taken from, was either the FPT committee or the Nithsdale Area Committee that decided the initial granting of the lease. I mean, we're being asked today to set a rental agreement. We don't know how much the Electric Theatre Company are making. We don't know what other overheads they've got because we've not had anything back from them. And we don't even know if that annual rent would still be applicable this year, knowing everything that's happened recently. You know, I don't feel like we have enough information, to be honest. Thank you.
That's Councillor Stevenson. I feel perhaps maybe you're right there, because I'm not sure we can set 25% of we don't know what, 25% of a guess. I mean, 25%, it might be the market value, might be quite astronomical rent, it might be quite nominal. So a 25% could be one end of the scale to the other. So I think we've got Councillor, I think it's Maureen Johnston wishing to come in again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do agree with Paula on that fact, and also Councillor Slater, that most of the people who work in the Electric Theatre are volunteers, and at this point we don't know what their income and their outgoings are. And if they were unable to cover this cost, they may just walk away and we'll end up with the hall empty for the next 6 months or even longer. Is this something we want to look at, having the hall empty?
Well, it is something we need to consider. I don't think that's a good option to have it empty, but at the same time, if there is a rent required for a building, under any circumstances, we don't usually ask whoever wishes to rent it what they earn first so that we can set the rent. You know, we set the rent, and this is where we're having the issue with at the same time, is we don't know what that 25%, as Ivor has suggested, 25%, 33%, whatever. It's a good start, but then when we don't have the solid fund, the cost of the market value to rate that on, then it's become quite difficult. Councillor Slater?
Yes, would it not be better to go to the electric light company and ask for a look at maybe possibly their books or their P&L accounts? That would give us more idea of whether they could afford to pay that amount of money.
That's Councillor Slater, but I'm not sure if that's within our gift to ask a business just to hand over their books so that we know what to charge in a rent. Paul, Julie, could you help me on this one?
Thanks, Chair. I'll refer that one to Julie.
Microphone off. I think, you know, we're the landlord in this instance, or should I say the licensor, because it's a license. So it's really up to us to set the rent or the license fee. And it's up to the licensee to decide whether or not they are in a position to pay that license fee as assessed by us as the licensor. That would be my position on that.
Thank you, Julie. I've got a couple of hands up. Darren, do you know who's first?
Yes, just Councillor Hislop next.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Hislop.
If it's a problem, what about £1,000 a month as the rent? And that's less than the 50,000, and it's less than the possible 20,000. And if it's somewhere in that ballpark, it's not out of the reach. And if it's going to be a case of it's going to be empty, well, it's going to be empty after we lease the building because they can't afford it anyway. So I think we should be looking to maximise what we have in the common good. That is our role as trustees of the Common Good Fund. And I think that's what we should be looking to do.
Thanks, Ivor. Is it Councillor Maureen Johnson and next are Eustace at a legacy hand?
Thanks, Chair. That was a legacy hand. Thank you.
Okay, then thanks. So I think we've got Councillor Dorward next. Am I right, Darren?
Yes, and Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for being late, but I have read the papers and catching up on the debate, which is really interesting. I think, Julie, you made a very good point. Application of due process is absolutely essential here, and Councillor Hislop's point of we need to maximise the common good side of the business. So we don't know the market value, it appears, and I think having the market value would be really useful for the hall, and then setting a fair rent. I think fair is where we need to be. I don't think we should be banding around figures at the moment because we don't know what the market value is, and I think a fair rent would be appropriate. But I do like Councillor Hislop's suggestion of a sliding scale. I think that's reasonable as well. So that's my tuppence worth. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Councillor John Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Yeah, just what Ivor said there. If I heard him right, he's kind of changed his mind and just said £1,000 per month for the remaining lease until a decision is made. If that's his proposal, I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell, but I'm kind of minded as Councillor Dorward. We don't know the market value, and is £1,000 a fair rent? We don't know. I don't know how. I think, if I'm right, members are in agreement to a 6-month extension with a 40-day notice at the end of that. Am I correct that members are happy with that decision?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Can I come back
with
in?
that decision.
Sorry, Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, just to come back on that particular point. I mean, if we're going to agree on a 6 months, we need to agree both 6 months and how much rent. Yeah, we don't have that information. We've got sort of ballpark figures. We've got 50k and 20k, which Paul alluded to. That's probably where we should be basing it around, if I'm right in saying. I see Paul nodding away. So if Ivor's suggestion is 1,000 a month, then for that 6 months with the 40-day period, I'm happy to go along with that. If that's what Ivor wants to push for a motion, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, just I need some clarity here, because the people currently in the building are asking for an extension. Right? What we're proposing now is an extension and a variation to that extension. Right? So this isn't a simple job of just saying, yeah, but we'll now put this and this and this on. They've currently got a legal agreement with us on a month-by-month basis. I'm right, it's due to come to an end at the end of March. The request from them is to continue that process until the other asset transfer, the other bit that's going on in the background, is complete. Right now, I think we all agree that you can't run any sort of business on a month-by-month basis, right? So, but that allows us to give them a month to quit the building and wind up if need be. So that also protects us in. If I'm reading this right, I'm hoping Julie's got a nod. It protects us if they're not the successful bidders in the other process. So what are we doing here? Because we're actually totally revisiting the whole thing here, rather than actually looking at what the issue is here. The issue is that the current tenant, who's in there till March, is asking for an extension of the current arrangements. Not to add to them, current arrangements. Are we going to agree to that or not? That's the first decision we have to take. If we're not going to agree to it, we'll need to take legal advice and professional advice of Julie and Paul about what our options are. But the first thing is, as I'm looking at it here, is we need to decide are we going to allow them to continue as is, as per the request, after the end of March. Then we can look at what we're going to do after that. The only worry I've got here is that we'd end up there with a hall back to where it was before, standing empty, nobody in it, and then another 6-9 months, then, God knows how long it would take the other process to complete. Because if all the other asset transfers we go through are ending to go by, it's not weeks, it's months, if no years, sometimes to complete. So, and this is a particularly intricate one. So I'm kind of of the view here that we should agree to let it continue for a number of months as is, right? And in the meantime, the other process kicks in, and then we look at if we were to say the 6 months from now, we could quite easily do that, and in 6 months' time, if we tell them we're reviewing your rent in 6 months' time. But right now, to come onto an organisation at a matter of days' notice and say we're wanting £1,000 this month off you and £1,000 next month, because that's what I thought Ivor said, John, not £1,000 a year. It was £1,000 a month, that's what he said. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. You make a very good point there. And before I let Councillor Campbell in, does Paul or Julie have anything to say on that? I think it might be Julie.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, the licence expires at the end of March. And if we want the licence to expire at the end of March, then I would write to them 40 days from that date and say, the licence has expired. Please vacate. My understanding of the position just now is if we agree to extend that licence, and Councillor Ferguson, I think, makes a very good point, agreement could also, I think, be made to say, well, yes, we want to extend, but we do also want to vary. So we could extend it for 6 months, I think. But the variation, because I will have to enter into a minute of variation with them anyway, which will extend the period. So I guess the question is, does that minute of variation just relate to the term, or does it also relate to the licence fee, which would be incorporated into that? So it seems to me that that decision is one for the committee to make, and questions I think have been asked about that. So depending on what decision is made today, I, on behalf of the council, can put those sort of recommendations into the variation. I presume before I do that, Paul would need to go back to the group and say, well, you know, the committee meeting's taken place. This is what the recommendations are. This is what's been agreed. Are you willing to accept that? And I guess we would hear at that point whether or not they were willing to accept it. If they weren't willing to accept it, then I would issue the notice. The licence would terminate. If they were willing to accept it, then I would enter into the variation with them. I think that's my understanding of the position. I hope that's clear.
Do you want to come back in, Andy, on that?
Yeah, thanks, Julie, because I'm looking at the recommendation 2.4, and the only bit where I've got any thing here is the month-by-month basis, because we've been agreed or not agreed to continue to occupy, and all the work's been done on that basis, not to vary it in any way other than potentially the period that we allow them to occupy for. Now, I'm easily swayed by the legal argument that if it's month to month and it lets us, the other long lease process, it's ongoing just now. If that comes to a speedy conclusion, then obviously the month by month is understandable why we would do that, and that could happen if they were not the organisation that won in that battle, that, for whatever you want to call it, you know, that bidding war. So I'm in the position here, and I don't know if I'm going to get anybody to support me here, but I actually think we go with 2.4. We do extend the licence, and on a 6 month basis, to be fair to them, because the current occupants, they're not going to get anybody to come and do anything in that place, you know, from outside the region, which attracts people into the town centre, right, if they're having to work month by month, because they're booking these acts and bands and God knows all what, sometimes even as far as a year in advance, or even more sometimes. So I don't know if there's anyone who wants to second me, but I'm quite happy to go with 2.4 to agree, but on a 6 month basis, and that gives us 40 days for them to quit. I think it was Julie's advice. I don't know if I've got a seconder for that or not, but I'm happy to put that forward.
Thanks, Andy. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Thanks, Julie, for giving us that explanation. Now, my understanding is that this recommendation 2.4 is a variation of its own. You know, when the lease expires in March, they've asked for that variation, so there's already a change being applied for. So I think we're well within our right to vary or make a variation of our own, which would be to ask for rent. Now, where we pitch that rent probably is still debatable. However, I still believe that they should be paying something, even if it's on a 6-month basis. So the variation's already been changed, in my view, at 2.4. So we're entitled to do our own variation. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. I think it's Councillor Slater first.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I filmed that building a few years ago, and I've filmed it several times since. And to actually see the state it fallen into disrepair, where the flooring had walked up the walls, water was pouring through the roof into a massive big pile of plastic. And I have to say, it saved the council. This hall has saved the council several times in the last few years, between Foot and Mouth, DG1 and whatever. It's the largest indoor space, I believe, in Dumfries, and it should be saved one way or another. And I think that to give an extension to the electric light company for another 6 months, it gives them a wee bit more opportunity to move their business forward. But month to month, I wouldn't sign a lease, never ever sign a lease month to month, never in my life would do that. So all I could say that the hall is very important, and if it was to fall empty again, I wouldn't like to see it fall into that state. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Slater. I don't think we're planning on the hall being under any peril. We're not having to save the hall, and I think a lot of the issues that you stated there that were disrepair have been rectified by the council when a whole new roof was put on. I think that's where the biggest situation was. But I think, to be fair, I think we're probably in agreement that 6 months with the 40-day notice seems to be what everyone's agreeing with. It's just whether we are able to charge a rent, or whether we feel that that's maybe too, I don't know whether we agree to do that or not. So I think Maureen Johnston, sorry, I think you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to agree with Councillor Ferguson on his point of 6 months and the 40 days. That gives them time to organise things and do things, not on a month-to-month basis. And that's just how I would like to see it done. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else? Councillor Ian Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to this debate carefully, and I think we are all in agreement about the 6 months. I don't think that's a problem. Where I do see Ivor's point of view, I think from raising it from an organisation that haven't paid anything to the level that it's been suggested would be difficult, especially at very short notice. I do take Councillor Ferguson's point, but I think there may be a middle road, even though it's just a token rent, but putting a rent that the guides pay to show some parity, or if they have more of the building than the guides have, proportionally, but base it on that, a minimum level, but that it would show parity and still give the extension for 6 months. Thank you.
That's Councillor Blake. So any more discussion on this? Councillor Ferguson.
Just picking up on Ian Blake's comment there, Provost. I think that's a very common sense approach. If we were to go down the same route as we do with the guides and do a proportionate amount, it would be, because the guides pay a peppercorn rate in there. That was agreed, because I remember being in the committee when it was agreed. I could live with that, right? But I can't live with £1,000 a month for an organisation like that. It they would just walk out. I think that's, and we would end up with nobody in it again, and then with another nonsense. And there's another process they've got there where that. So if we were to look at an amount of money, and if we were to agree, well, the first thing is, do we agree to allow this to continue on a month-by-month basis up to a maximum of 6 months? I think is what was probably the way Julie would word it. I'm not sure. And it would be a peppercorn rent of £1,000 plus whatever that extra square footage is. And no doubt Paul could work that out, or get somebody to work that out for us. So even if it's for the whole year, it was 1,500 or £2,000 for the whole year. That's different, a lot different from £1,000 a month for an organisation. That's I mean, we're talking of rebuilding the town centre economy. We're talking about all these other things, and what we're doing here, right? One of the organisations, whether we like them or not, whatever it is, at least bring people into the town centre and use that building on a regular basis. Hugely successful. I've been in there and stuff. We other elected members, and the place is full. So we should be supporting that to a certain extent. That's what this whole process is about. So I'd be quite happy to amend what I'm saying is, yes, we agree it on a month-to-month basis up to a maximum of 6 months, right, or until the other process is concluded, whichever is the shorter, right, and to put a peppercorn rent on, which is in proportion to what the guides pay for theirs. And I think that's actually fair to the guides, of course, because if we do this long time, the guys have got to come back and ask us for free, and that would be the next thing. So we'd end up with everything going away for nothing. So I think it's probably the sensible way out there, and I don't think it's unreasonable for them to match what the guides pay on a percentage of the square footage that they actually occupy. And just looking at Paul, and is that doable, Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. So absolutely, we know how much the guides pay. We know how much area the guides occupy. So it'd be very easy to apportion rent based on the peppercorn paid by the guides as to the area that the Electric Theatre Company have got.
Thanks for that, Paul. But wouldn't that, because it was square footage of how much they occupy, wouldn't that put the rent as far up as about £1,000 a month anyway? Because the guides have got a very small area, and the area that the Electric Theatre Workshop have is quite extensive. So I think that then we would end up with a very high rent. I agree with Councillor Ferguson that I agree with everyone here for all different reasons. First of all, Councillor Ferguson, I think we'd come out of that. We'd all agreed not to do the month by month. It would be a 6 month with a 40-day notice. I mean, if the process is ongoing to find a permanent leaseholder, then perhaps we could come back then, and maybe if there was a call for a further extension, then we would address that at the time. But I think we're going for 6 months, is what my understanding is, with a 40-day notice, so that not the month by month, and it would allow this organisation to plan ahead. As you said, they bring lots of events in. I don't think they would be able to do that month by month. But when we're talking about no rent and rent, it doesn't seem fair that the guides pay rent and the Electric Theatre Workshop do not. But at the same time, if we did it by square footage, I think we would find that we were giving such a large rent to them. I think a nominal, I think we need to have something, but I'm not, as Councillor Ferguson said as well, to just throw a massive amount of rent onto this organisation from nowhere is probably a little bit steep. Paul, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So to answer your question, if we did a portion based on the areas of the guides versus the Electric Theatre Company, the rent would be significant. Based on the 50k previously reported, you're probably looking at about 35k a year, albeit the market rent's questionable at that 50k.
Thanks, Paul. I don't think that's what anyone really wants with that. So I think we've got Councillor Stevenson first.
Oh, thank you, Provost. I know, I mean, again, we're speculating, and I don't think that really sits well with me. I do agree with basing it maybe more on what the guides pay. The square footage thing, I did kind of wonder when that was raised how much that would increase it by, because it is quite a substantial space. And from all the constituents I've heard from, they are, very, very in favour of them staying there in the meantime. So we need to make it fair. This isn't the normal setting of rent that you normally would do as a landlord or a licence or whatever. They're already in there on an agreement of zero rent. So really it's us looking, for basically for them to pay a fair share that isn't going to leave the hall empty, because nobody wants that either. So we are in a very odd position here, where it's not setting the rent, it's asking for a contribution really from what they're making, but enough that they can survive in there for the next 6 months, knowing that it is only 6 months over a festival period, where bands and other performers and that will be fully booked, so they're already going to have quite a hard time doing that. But at the same time, we're here to make money for the Common Good Committee. But like I say, I feel that we're again back into that speculation, and I don't think that's helpful to anybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. I think we've got Councillor Slater next.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, 6 months, I would agree with that. 6 months, but the rent, obviously we have to be very careful here, because they're trying to build a business here. It's very difficult in these times, and if you make the rent too high, they could just walk away and we end up with an empty building, could lie there for months or even longer. So you have to look at it in this way. They're actually doing their best to look after the building at this point, and there's something happening with the building. But if it starts to lie empty again, then it would end up probably deteriorating, and we don't want that to happen. And if you don't have the people there and an organisation trying to do something, we would have nothing really. We would just have an empty hall. So the rent, what they can afford to pay, I haven't seen their books. I can't obviously say what they could afford to pay. But if it's too much and it restricts them too much, you just could walk away. And that's my concern. But 6 months, I agree with. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slater. I think we've established that I think we have the 6 months, and I think perhaps no one wants the hall to be empty, but no one wants to restrict an organisation also, a business also. It's trying to meet that middle ground, but I also appreciate Councillor Stevenson's comments on we are speculating about money. So do we do it in line? Do we charge something for a start, or do we just carry on the lease with 6 months, or do we do it nominal? I think this is what we need to iron out, because we're not going to get a market value figure right now. We're not going to be able to base it on that, and I think we've agreed that we're maybe not sure if that's the correct thing to do anyway, because it may be too high a price to be charging immediately if we did decide to do that. So I've got Councillor Blake first.
Yeah, it's just going back to my point. It was ignorance on my part. I didn't realise the occupational proportionality of the building. I thought it would nearer the 50-50. That was just to say that I was incorrect in that one. Now I would still go back to suggest that we base it on the peppercorn rate, albeit if it's significantly a bigger area, if it's the majority of the building. In fact, we can maybe say it's the full £1,000 for the 6 months, but no more than that. I think it's short notice on a company such as this. I think it would put too much a burden on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. I know I've got hands up. Can't see who they are.
Chair, Councillor Hislop, then Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Darren.
Chair.
Yeah.
We're hearing the story that it would be wrong to charge them because if it was month to month, they wouldn't be able to book anybody. But surely if they're going to be booking people, they would have to have had it done by now. Because if it takes 4 or 5 months to book them, and if they haven't booked them, they can put it on the price of their ticket to cover the rent. That would make business sense to me. Or have they actually booked the act and decided, oh, well, we'll not need to pay any rent, we'll tug on the heartstrings, we're all volunteers, so are the guides. They pay money. You know, this needs to be a rent. And personally, if Councillor Ferguson's still moving that we apportion it in the same rates, you know, that's got to be 35 grand to pay. Now, I wouldn't do that. I think if we set them £1,000 a month, it isn't untoward. They can sell their tickets and they can accommodate that within their actual business plan. And if they can't make that pay, how are they going to run the actual business after if they're coming in? Are we going to be sitting here in 2 years' time or in FPT looking at a section, is it 11 write-off a debt? Is that what we're going to be looking? We need also to make sure that we have a business that can actually run in there. And we need to recoup money for the common good. This is an asset. And I think that it's a business that's running in there. And they need to take the business attitude of how to run a business to see if it's actually viable. So I think £1,000 a month isn't an unfair ask.
Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Jordan, I think it's you next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, we're in a very difficult position because we're trying to balance so many things. We're trying to balance the interests of the common good. We're trying to support our local charities and organisations, and we want to make it the centre as accessible to as many groups as possible. And we want to be fair. And I don't think we're being fair if we're charging the Girl Guides the amount that we're charging them a year, and then we're not charging another group. And so do we need to look at how much we charge the Girl Guides and how we came to that figure? I just think that we need to be making sure that whatever we charge people, it's based on something sensible and that it's fair, so that the hall is accessible to all groups. I think that the amount we charge the Girl Guides is a lot a year for, I don't know how much they use it. I don't know if it's the rainbows, the brownies, the guides, the rangers, or if it's just one group. That, of course, you have to bear in mind, they don't meet every week of the year. They probably meet about 42 weeks in a year. So if you divide that by the amount of weeks they meet, that's quite high. But I'm just keen for us to make sure we are fair, but also supporting groups. It's very difficult balance. But thank you very much, Chair. That's me.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. My understanding that the guides, the brownies, or all the different organisations, they don't actually meet at the hall. They have a shop premises there. Am I right, Paul? That's what it is. They have like a store and a shop premises there.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and their sort of regional office works out of that premise.
Thanks, Paul. So this is a 52-week year thing. This is not something that's only for how many times they meet. Darren, is it Councillor Ferguson next?
Yeah, his hand's been taken down, so it's Councillor Campbell.
Okay, then Councillor Campbell.
Thanks again, Provost. Yeah, a couple of points. The first point is that Girl Guides paying $1,000 a year. I wouldn't say that was peppercorn. They don't have any income coming in, and yet they've been paying £1,000 a year. The Electric Theatre, they bring in money every week, every month. They make, I don't know, profits, I would suggest, that would more than compensate for what Councillor Hislop's been saying. I still stand by, if Councillor Hislop wants to put that forward as a motion, I will still second his motion. Thank you, Provost.
That's Councillor Campbell. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I just couldn't find the button there. I think it's a legacy hand, mine. But I still stand my point. I think we should make it the peppercorn rate, maybe even double what the guides pay because of the occupancy of the building, but no more than that. I think after the 6 months, we could be looking at something totally different. I think we've got to give them some chance. It's very short notice to put an excessive rent on at this stage. If Councillor Ferguson is quite happy to include that in his motion with the 6 months that we've agreed and the peppercorn rate rent of up to £1,000 for the 6 months, I'd be quite happy to support that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Blake. Councillor Ferguson?
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, just Ian, yes, I would be happy to go along with that because that, to me, makes so much common sense. I think it's a bit difficult for Paul to answer this question because it was his predecessor that was in place at the time. But if I remember correctly, the guides actually they hire the office part of it, and the way it was calculated, it was different rates per occupancy for different purposes for buildings. Keep me right here, Paul, if I'm talking rubbish. But the guides are what they pay was valued as an office, a town centre office accommodation, which is what it is. And the bit at the back is for a different purpose. So it's not a case of just like in apple and apple. It's not even apple and pears. It's maybe two different types of apple. If you know what I'm getting at here. So am I right, Paul, in that the way you would come to a fair rent for somewhere, it depends on the purpose that the hall is being used for, or what it could be used for. But just before you come in, Paul, I'm happy if Councillor Blake is willing to come in with that. I'm quite happy to go with the 6 months and charge them £2,000 for the 6 month period, right, as a peppercorn rent, and take it from there. So I'm happy to amend what I said earlier, Tracy. But I'd be happy to see please hear what Paul would say about how you actually come to a marketing position about how much you would charge for different types of premise.
Thanks, Andy. But I think the hall itself is not just a hall. There's several other halls off the hall, so it's not just one place, one sort of room as well. But no, Paul, would you like to come in there?
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. So yes, the Girl Guides organisation do occupy what's predominantly office accommodation to the front of the building. So in terms of taking matters forward, obviously there's decisions to be taken here, but just to inform members of the process, the longer term process. So what we'll do is we'll advertise the hall for rent, and we will ask organisations to put forward their proposals. Now, it may be at a point in time in the future, members are being asked to take a decision on what would be less than best consideration. So it'll really depend on who comes forward with a bid and what their bid is. Now, bids might be made at less than best consideration, if indeed any rent at all. So make members aware as we go forward through this process that organisations will be asked to put their bids forward. They'll be scored in accordance with the process laid out in the paper, and then members will be asked to take a decision.
A minute, I've got confused here, Paul. It was my understanding we were agreeing with letting this group have an extension of 6 months with a 40-day notice. But you mentioned there about advertising and other organisations having the chance to bid in for rent.
That's the longer term process, Chair. So this would take care, you're absolutely right, this decision today would take care of the next 6 months. Running in parallel with that would be our longer term position regarding who ultimately rents the building over the longer period.
Right, so this is to do with our applications for the longer lease that the process that we're entering in at the moment anyway. Yeah, okay, thank you. Are you okay with that, Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Darren, do you know who's in next?
It is Councillor Slater, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Slater, you wish to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say, the hall, when it was refurbished, quite a large part of the hall hasn't been refurbished. I don't think the offices upstairs were refurbished, and the kitchen area is still just sitting with bits and pieces in it. So you're talking about a building that's not fully refurbished, and then obviously that will have to reflect on the rent as well, I would have thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater.
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, we have a motion on the table and we have an amendment. That's procedural.
I'm just letting everyone... I've got a few hands up, though, Councillor Campbell. I just wish to see what everyone else...
Unless they're counter amendments, I think it's a procedural motion and amendment.
Okay, Councillor Campbell. I just last points for people with their hands, and then we will go to... We'll find out... We will read out what the motion and amendment are. So, Darren, did you have anyone else?
There's no one else. We can go to the...
These are all legacy hands.
They are.
Right, I don't know if you can read out what, or whether the movers and seconders, etc., can, the sort of motions and amendments can come forward with what they wish to declare.
Well, I've got them here. I'm happy to read them out and for them to be corrected. And just with an element of some artistic license, just to accommodate the 6-month extension, which we've agreed. So the motion is to agree a variation of license to extend for 6 months and charge a rent of £1,000 per month, proposed by Councillor Hislop, seconded by Councillor Campbell. And the amendment is to agree a variation of the licence to extend for 6 months and charge a rent of £2,000 for the 6-month period. And that's proposed by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Blake.
Are we all in agreement? The motion and amendment, are we in agreement that these are in fact your wishes? Councillor Ferguson, is this how you wish it to £2,000 for the 6 months and the 6 months extension with the 40-day notice? Is that how you wish it to go?
Yeah, that's the compromise I was happy to make to get Ian Blake's support. Thank you.
That's great. So that is the amendment, Darren?
That would be the amendment, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor Hislop, your motion of 6 months extension and with a 40-day notice with a rent of £1,000 per month, is that your motion?
Yes.
That's great, thank you. Darren, can we go to the vote then?
We can. I'll just go through the roll call. Chair.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Motion.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Dorward.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor Malcolm Johnston.
Motion.
Councillor Maureen Johnston.
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan.
Amendment.
Councillor Lowe.
Amendment.
Councillor Slater.
Amendment.
Councillor Stevenson.
Motion.
Councillor Stitt.
Motion.
Chair, 14 members present, 7 voting in favour of the motion, 7 voting in favour for the amendment.
So we've got hung jury. So what's our procedure now?
Just 1 second, just to confirm. Sorry, Chair, just checking. Councillor Julie will just keep me right here, but my understanding of standing order is that the Chair will have casting vote.
That's my understanding.
Okay then, so I would go with amendment. I agree that to take some rent for this premises, but the lesser amount would be of my wish. Thank you. So amendment.
Thank you, Chair. So the amendment's carried. That's to agree a variation of licence to extend the period 6 months and to charge a rent of £2,000 for the period of 6 months.
Thank you, Darren. And so we'll go to the recommendations. So note that the consultation period, as required by Section 104 of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015, commenced on Monday the 19th of December 2022 and will conclude on Monday the 27th of February 2023 at paragraph 3.1. Note the groups that have been notified of the consultation exercise at paragraph 3.2. And note that the current short-term licence agreement with the Electric Theatre Workshop Limited expires at the end of March 2023, and that the company has requested an extension to the current licence until the matter of the long lease has been concluded at paragraph 3.5. And 4, agree or not agree that Electric Theatre Workshop Limited are allowed to continue to occupy the Lorburn Hall by way of an extension of the current short-term licence agreement. And we've agreed a 6-month extension with a 40-day notice. And 5, note the scoring mechanism that is under development for use should competing offers be made to determine the option that is best consideration at paragraph 3.8, and agree to receive further reports on this matter at each of the key milestones as highlighted in paragraph 3.3. And members agree with all those? Sorry,
Chair,
Darren?
sorry, just for 2.4, it would be agree to that variation of the licence of 6 months and to charge £2,000 for the 6 months, which you hadn't mentioned. So that was the agreed amendment.
That's great. Thank you, Darren. Thanks for reminding me. So item 7, I've got no items of urgent business, but I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and for their contributions. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Chair.
Chair.